Hello, hello. Welcome to Human Design Coffee Talk.
Welcome, welcome.
Today we have Tiffany Dunagan on, and Tiffany is a 2-4 reflector. I have known Tiffany for a very long time. She's a very dear friend of mine. And when I kind of got into human design, I I was sharing with everybody in my life, and she was one of those people. And lo and behold, she is one of the 1%. And one of the like 7 reflectors in my life. So it's pretty fascinating. So thank you for coming on today, Tiffany.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Um, all right, we'll just jump right into it.
I'm
So
going to
Tiffany,
share her chart.
yeah, for those of you on YouTube, we have her chart up so you can check it out. She is, for those of you listening, 2-4 reflector, cross of the Maya. She is touch cognition, and yeah, that'll come into play later. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So Tiffany, I would love to hear if you can remember the first time you saw your chart, learned about being a reflector, um, anything that you have to speak on about just kind of that initial introduction to human design.
Yeah, I mean, it was when you called me and you were like, I tell me your birthday. There was no introduction, like what you're doing. I'm like, okay. So I did. And then you're like, and I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? Is there something wrong with me? Like what? You were just like, then you said, no, you're a reflector. It's really rare. My sister's also a reflector, which you were just kind of like processing all of that information. Um, and to me, it meant nothing. I was like, okay, I don't know what this means. And you were still kind of new to it at the time too. So you kind of just gave me that baseline information about it. Um, and then you were sending me lots of links and things to kind of look at and follow. And so I kind of went down one layer of the rabbit hole, let's say. And then I did end up buying the human design book. And I've never read through it. So I've just gone through and kind of picked pieces out.
Mhm.
Um, but that's basically the whole journey of it. I mean, and then just following other people and learning more about my own, during the transits and those kinds of things.
Yeah, and you had a time period where you were really tracking the moon. You kind of invested into yourself to kind of,
Yeah.
you're very much somebody who likes to draw upon like mystical things, and you're like, well, this is kind of explaining a lot of who I am, so maybe I'll kind of lean into this. How was your experiment with tracking the moon?
Yeah, so I had talked with a girl that I found on Instagram, and she kind of told me like how to track it with the moon and just to kind of journal a brief journal entry every day um, about my day experience for the day. And then after doing it for a few months, I realized I would know kind of how I was going to feel every day of the moon the next month. Like it was very similar, depending on the circumstances, of course. But there's like a day where of the month where I really despise my husband. And then there's the next day where he's like the best person that's ever been in my life, which is funny because I remember sitting on your porch having a conversation with you one day and being like, inventing about my situation. And you were just like, I'll listen to you for as long as you want me to listen to you, but you're kind of saying the same thing over and over. And I remember thinking like, yeah, I am. And that was before I started this tracking cycle. And it's funny because that would have aligned with that day of the moon where it's like, he's the worst person ever. So yeah, but it's not just that. I mean, it's much bigger, but like those are the little like subtle nuances that I noticed from month to month.
Mm.
Yeah.
And your husband is a splenic projector.
Yeah.
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 And you have 3 children.
Hmm. Yes.
A You have an emotional generator, an emotional MG, and an emotional a projector.
I think he might be splenic
Oh,
too.
splenic. Yeah,
I think.
Kellen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or is your husband emotional? I always get those two mixed up.
Me too. Yeah. I don't actually remember what my youngest is. I don't know if she's emotional, but I know that my oldest is an emotional MG.
Yeah, I think Amelia is I think she's a
She?
1949,
Yeah, okay.
which
So
it
it's
would be an emotional. Yeah.
yeah.
How is it navigating parenting as a reflector or just with your awareness and how you process things, how you need to externalize, how you need your time to yourself as you're taking everything in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know how other people experience this, but for myself, being or knowing my design and being a parent, it makes sense why I've felt so overwhelmed as a mom. But it's a lot. It's difficult to be a parent for anybody. But I find myself realizing sometimes the feelings I'm having, they're not my feelings, which kind of makes so my oldest can manipulate me pretty easily because he's very convincing when he is feeling his wave and he's at like the height of his wave and he's like, and then I empathize with him because I can feel how he's feeling, and then I'm redirecting to sort of make what he wants be possible because I can feel his truth inside of his emotions. But yeah, knowing my design makes it easier to be able to be in relationship with all of them in a healthy way versus thinking everything that they're feeling is mine and then going to bed every night with a tremendous amount of guilt over
Mm.
being a mom.
Mm. There's a couple things there I want to
Mm-hmm.
touch on.
Okay.
Number one being environment is very important for a reflector. When you are feeling overwhelmed at home, I witnessed this with my sister. I witnessed her just be like, I can't mom right now. And she'll just leave the area. I mean, her children they're old enough to where they're not going to get into things, or hurt themselves. Do you find yourself doing that or feel like you have the ability to do that?
I think now more than ever before I do that, I have to do that. A lot of times there's a lot of big emotions in our house, and it's like trying to stay calm inside of yourself while like giving them this emotional support. It is extremely draining for me. So yeah, I have to kind of go hide in the bedroom like a lot and just be like shut the door. I have a little sign on the outside of the door. They know like at least 10 minutes, at least 10. If I could have longer, I would take longer, like a whole day if I could.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And with sleeping, I do want to bring this up with all your openness. We talk a lot on human design about how Teresa and I have found great deconditioning with sleeping by ourselves. And you kind of have that built into your relationship because your husband works overnight and he's
Mhm.
gone during the evening. So you naturally get to sleep by yourself.
Yeah.
What
And
difference?
even before he worked nights, when we were younger, it was like, this is my bed. You sleep here, I sleep here. And it was always like this feeling inside, like, oh, what would people think if they knew that we didn't sleep in the same bed? Would they think there's something wrong with our marriage? And it's like, I never cared enough to change it. And I'm glad I didn't because I can't, when we do share a bed, which sometimes we do, it's miserable. It's absolutely miserable the next day. I'm tired. He's tired. It's not great. So we've
Mm-hmm.
always kind of done it, even not knowing that that's better for us as a whole.
I really love hearing about when people are naturally doing those things before they know about design, or even people that have no idea about design and they're describing how they live. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you are living according to your design. And
Yeah.
those uncomfortable, or our reality could be uncomfortable to other people, sharing like we have separate bedrooms. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even, I experience that when I talk about our house and I'm like, oh yeah, my bedroom. And this is, or if people come over, I'm like, this is my bedroom. This is Andy's bedroom. And I feel this thing that they're like, what's the matter?
Yeah, like a little side note bubble of
Yeah.
their
You can just feel, we're all fifth and sixth tone here. So your touch cognition, we're feeling. So we all kind of can touch into those frequencies. And you can
head.
just feel it when people are like, and you're like, actually, this is how I have a marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. It does work out great that he works nights because we don't even have to talk about it. When he gets home, he actually just lays on the couch until I get the kids off to school and then he goes back to the room. It just works out great.
So you parented very much like I did. Tiffany and I actually met when our children were babies. And we kind of went through this, we bonded over our how we parented differently. Well, it's not so different anymore. Our children are older, and so hundreds of thousands and millions of people are, parenting more attached and, taking care of our children's needs and kind of rewriting how we were raised, right? I would be curious to know, did you notice a difference in how you felt with co-sleeping with each of your children?
Oh, that's something I've never thought about before. Um, no. No, I
No?
can't say I did. No, and I did co-sleep for an extended period of time. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're exhausted as a mom anyway, so I don't know how it affected me in that way because I extended breastfeeding too. So it was like getting up, breastfeeding multiple times in the night, which is why it was so much easier to co-sleep. But as far as the impact it had on me the next day or however long after, I don't know if I could speak on that really. I wouldn't have changed it though.
Mm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Teresa, what are you picking up?
I'm just enjoying listening. Yeah, I was wondering, I know you're into energy medicine and we've talked about this before and you incorporate that into your work as a massage therapist and I always think it's really interesting that when people with touch cognition are into body work and
Hmm.
on one hand touch cognition you're very sensitive, you're very touchy. And so you're taking in a lot of data when you're touching somebody, when you have your hands on them. And I just wonder doing that as a profession, is that hard sometimes to be so sensitive to touching somebody, but having to do that for a living?
I I don't know because it's just very natural to me. It's just my normal state is that there are times when people will touch me that I'm just like, ugh, don't touch me. Um, a lot of times, actually, I don't really like to be touched unless
Mm.
it's something that there's moments where I want to be touched, right? But I don't like people just touching me. I don't like, but when I'm in my place of work, or even if I put my hands on a family member or something, it's just my hands without my thought will just go somewhere, and I'll like massage a little spot on their body or just hold my hand and I'll get like, why are your hands so hot? What's going on? And it's like, oh, I didn't even realize I was touching you. But um, yeah, I don't think it's not a difficult transition to be that way. No.
That's awesome. Yeah, and even just hearing you say it's natural for me, you're a second line and second lines are naturals. And so in my experience as a second line, when something feels natural or like second nature, there isn't as much of a challenge there as there might be for some people. Because I've heard other people touch cognition say it can be difficult to be touching people often. But then again, it's like you're so drawn to that profession where that's what you're doing. So
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, Tiffany is an energy worker, a massage therapist. And it feels so good to just go into her space and lay on the table. And she'll be like, what are you doing today? And I might have a complaint or be like, my, leg hurts or something. But a lot of times, 9 out of 10 times, I just go in there and I'm like, whatever you feel, whatever you need to do. And she literally will touch my body and she'll go exactly to to where the thing is, even if I didn't voice it. And I'm like, how does she fucking know? I mean, I know how you know, but it's just so amazing to watch. And Tiffany, in a previous episode, I've talked about how I'm surrounded by two fours. We talked about hope, motivation, calling out second lines. She's one of the second lines in my life that I'm always like, knock, knock, knock. You're fucking amazing. Hey, hey, do you see how amazing you are? Oh, yeah, I just like doing this. And oh, I'm just doing this thing. And just like, you guys. And you're so humble, and I really appreciate that about you. You really carry a balanced, neutral, we talk about in human design that reflector being like, we often reference like Supreme Court justices, whether we think our actual Supreme Court justices are neutral or not, just this very neutral party, this person that, has a perspective that is very balanced. And Tiffany, you really embody that. So I just want to give you props for that. You're
Thank
always
you.
somebody that I can go to. You're always like a good sounding board of neutrality. Even if you have a perspective or an opinion on something, it still comes out with this like grace.
Not always. It's something I've had to actively work on. I think some of that comes from just being a little older and more mature. I think it took me a long time to get there for sure, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But it's active. It's an active thought process. Sometimes it's like just quiet. Just wait for the moment. You don't have to say everything you think when you think it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would be curious if you want to talk about knowing that you're a projector and being able to reflect back on your
You mean
childhood.
reflector?
Or a reflector. Did I say projector? A reflector. If you want to reflect back on your childhood, I know we've had some conversations about aha moments of how you felt. Are you comfortable going there?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, I don't know what we want to get into, or like if there's just
Just
kind
like
of,
that belonging, that feeling different.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a divorced family. And I think I've just always been different, like from the rest of my family, on both sides. It's not that I don't fit in or that we don't get along. Well, some of us don't, but that's kind of a family thing,
That's
right?
family stuff. Yeah.
But I think I've just always felt a little bit on the outside of most things. And actually, when I was younger, it was kind of like disheartening to feel that way. Like it always felt like there was something inherently wrong with me, or something along those lines, I guess, where it was like self-doubt, or which is part of my design too. But it's like yeah, I think it was, I don't know. I think my family, they have, like any family, like whatever they have going on that could be considered an issue, right? And then I am there just existing, and it's amplifying everything that they're experiencing. And so I'm immediately like, whatever it is about me that triggers those things in them, even if I'm not doing anything or saying anything, it caused turmoil in my childhood, right? And so I had to kind of like fight for myself all the time, or I felt like I had to kind of fight to for justice, I guess, was kind of how I always felt like what I was doing. Like when there's an imbalance, or if there's like a injustice happening, I've always felt like it was my job to intervene and speak up. Um, so I mean, looking back, knowing part of that is being a reflector, I mean, it makes more sense. But um yeah, I think that a lot of kids just in general feel misunderstood, but I don't know if I felt any more or less misunderstood than other kids, but I would say I didn't have an easy childhood. That's not something I would say about myself for sure.
Some of the things I've heard you speak about, I also hear my sister comment about, with her just feeling like not
Mm.
not included, but
Oh
not
yeah.
like, almost like, I can look at this screen and I see this body graph and there's no definition, there's no consistent, like, who you are consistently. And so
Mhm.
it's, I hear my sister talk about feeling like forgotten, or feeling like almost like nobody notices you're there, or they
Yeah,
really notice you're there, this stark contrast a lot.
absolutely. Yeah.
Almost like Home Alone when the kid gets left, you know?
It is very much like that. It is. Okay, so more specifically, yes. Like I always thought it was because we had a split family. And so I lived with my mom and I would visit my dad, but my dad and my that side of the family would go on vacations. And I never knew about the vacations until years later. And then I was like, what is going on? Why did you do these things without me? And it was just kind of like this nonchalant response. Like, we didn't think you'd want to go. I was like, you don't think I'd want to go to Disney World? Like,
Yeah.
what? So, I don't know if that has anything to do with my design. I have no idea, but that is a very accurate statement that I did feel left out all the time.
Yeah.
Or like I was the one causing all the middle of the storm. I was the eye of the storm and everything was like the chaos around me was somehow my doing. Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
was very much like either too much attention or none at all, for sure.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Reflectors technically amplify the transits. So you're obviously picking up stuff from your family and from people around you, but you're also almost like this, like projecting out what's happening in the cosmos. So I wonder if sometimes where it would just be interesting to ponder or to think about how you having different transits kind of projecting out of you would, it's almost like people would treat you differently depending on what is going on in the cosmos, because you're almost like this antenna for the cosmos. And then you're reflecting that out to them like, hey, this is what's going on up there, and so yeah, it's almost like a weather meter or something, a barometer.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm interested in. Now that you're saying that, I'd like to sort of track that as well, because I bet that would be a recurring theme too.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not the voice for human design reflectors. I'm not out here like actively doing things. I'm just experiencing it and trying to relate all of these things together. It's just the one thing that I've looked at that's been absolutely accurate, the most descriptive way to understand myself that I've ever encountered. So, but I'm definitely not the voice for the reflectors. I just am trying to experience it. That is an interesting concept that I really want to explore.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd
Yeah.
be fun for you to play with, I'm sure. Um, I also have heard, I don't know if this was in the source material, I don't know where I heard this, but that the reflector aura is actually the biggest aura. Like it could fill a football field. And do you feel like you've experienced that, almost a sensation of your aura kind of filling a room, or your aura being expansive like that?
Because you're sampling. So the sampling.
I don't know what that feels like, but I do know, like, for instance, yesterday when I went to Costco, I felt like I was taking into, like, there's times where I'm in a crowded space and I can sort of compartmentalize everything going on around me and not focus on everything happening. But yesterday I was not. And so maybe that is what that feeling is like, because I felt like I was getting everybody's information in the whole place. And it was not a good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what that is. I don't know.
Yeah. Like oversampling.
Yeah, like get it together and reel it in, because that's too many things coming in. It's too much information.
Mm.
I think sometimes too, like it's obviously all subconsciously happening, But when people come into your aura and they are like busy minded and they're processing their own stuff, and you're automatically like, let me get in there. Let me, and then all of a sudden there's all this exchange happening. And then even without having a conversation or even knowing somebody, they're instantly frustrated with you because you're
Mm.
in that space, is what it feels like. Like, I don't know if that's part of the sampling process. I don't know what's happening in that moment, but I'm just like, I didn't want it. I'm not like trying to get it. It's just here now. And you can have it back. I don't want it.
Do you feel like you're reflecting back their internal process and maybe they're
Absolutely.
not? It's almost like, because I'm thinking about an incident that I had with a reflector friend of mine at one point. I was in a lot of turmoil around, whether or not to get a job, change my career, go into corporate. And I remember talking to her and she was basically reflecting back to me what my subconscious was experiencing, but without me consciously aware of it. So I remember feeling annoyed with her because I was like, why are you telling me to do this? Like she was basically telling me to go into the tech industry and totally change careers and it was almost like everything that my inner critic was telling me was dialed up and she was reflecting that back to me, but neither of us were conscious of it, right? So we were just in the moment experiencing it and she's reflecting it to me. And later on, I found myself feeling upset with her. But then I was like, oh my gosh, wait, she was just reflecting to me exactly how a part of me was feeling that I wasn't willing to look at. And it was actually really important for me to have that reflected to me because I didn't like that. I didn't like sitting with that and almost thinking about that as my reality. I don't know if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely something that I've also had to actively work on, because when I'm in presence with people who are sharing something with me, I can feel how they want me to feel, but I can also feel how they actually feel. Like, so I can feel how they want me to see them and how they actually are seen. I can feel um, a lot of things. I think a lot of people can. I'm assuming like we can pick up on each other that way. I feel like it's just a little bit deeper than that sometimes, where it's like I can really understand, and it's not a judgmental thing, but I can just really feel what you're experiencing versus what you're saying that you're experiencing. And
Yeah,
actively not giving the feedback that triggers the person in a way that pushes them even further away from where they're trying to get on a deeper level, or a higher level, I should say. Because I
totally.
think sometimes it triggers people to push those things even further down. So they're not ready to, sometimes people just are not ready to feel how they really truly feel. And pushing it on people makes it, sometimes can amplify it in a bad way.
Totally. I wonder how different the conversation, just the example I gave, how different that would have felt if she would have been like, "Hey, it feels like there's a subconscious part of you that is really feeling like you need to do this. And
Mhm.
I'm feeling that really strongly from you. And let's unpack that together versus just acting like that subconscious part of me. Because if I didn't have the awareness of, oh, she's a reflector and, be able to unpack that for myself later throughout the day or whatever, I probably would have just gotten mad at her and like stayed mad at her,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
And
she
there's
also
the
doesn't
other.
realize what's happening necessarily in that moment. So yeah, I can totally see what you're saying is like some people might react strongly to the whole, well, I'm feeling this from you and let's unpack that. And then some people are going to feel strongly to you just reflecting it to them, whether or not you're conscious of it.
Mhm. Yeah, 100% accurate for me.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing you speak a lot, and I'm just like looking at parts of your chart, and I'm like, oh, right angle cross the Maya
Hmm.
reflector. We're looking at how like the holistic part of the chart, like all the little parts of you that are just the absolutes.
I
Hearing
love that
for
you're a cross of the Maya. My mom is a cross of the Maya as well. And obviously not that you'd be the same, but you experience same or similar thematics. And when it comes to this cross, there's this big theme of survival. And do you notice that any themes of that in your life of like wanting to be prepared for the future or just having kind of a focus on survival in any way or being aware of what will fail and what won't, like what will succeed and that kind of thing?
I don't know if I necessarily feel like a strong survival instinct. Like I'm not like a prepper or something, but I have random thoughts of like, oh, maybe I should get some like things just in case. But that's like as far as it goes. Yeah, I don't know if that would be accurate if I would say. If it is, it's not something I've tapped into just yet.
I see it too playing out kind of with the other like that themes of that cross are like growth, inner truth, those things that you're kind of like other people are like you bring that and they're like it might be for their survival.
Mm,
Yeah, because there's also a theme with this cross of it's almost like the balance between the mystical and the mundane.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed this with my mom too, because she's always been really into spirituality and, taught me Reiki when I was like 5 years old. And then there's this very practical side of her that like has an understanding of how this mundane matrix works. And so it's almost like she brings that mystical into the mundane to
Mhm.
help kind of bridge that gap for people.
It's exactly what I think about with Tiffany.
that's like that resonated very deeply. So yeah, I'm like, oh
Yes.
yeah, there we go. This is what I'm
I'm like, I
looking
got
for.
it.
And I've seen you kind of like try to find the balance in yourself with that too over
Yeah,
the years that I've known you. You're like, there's this all this mystical, magical shit. And then how
yeah.
do I like what does it mean here? How do I like translate this? What do I do with all of this? How do
Yeah.
I yeah.
Yeah,
How
when
can
I
I
was a kid, I would say like, children are just so open to everything. So I had all of these experiences and eventually got to a point where I was like, okay, no more, none of that, right? Like my teenage years. And then as a young adult, when I was like getting back into this like mystical spirituality, finding out who I was and that kind of thing, I dove in nose first. Like I was deep in, and it was just like all spirituality, mystical stuff. Like I was just like completely detached from reality for many years. And then it was like, okay, it's time to put your feet back down on earth and ground out and figure out how to find balance between these two worlds because it was like I was just floating around and nothing made sense anymore. So, yeah, for sure finding that bridge between the two worlds and being able to stay grounded in this existence while also being very, aware of my spirituality and that kind of thing.
Mhm. I love that. Mm.
I would love to ask you about your signature. So we have the reflector not self theme being disappointment, reflector signature being surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And would you like to share about a time recently when you were surprised by an interaction with your family?
Yeah.
Kind of start from when you walked in.
Okay. So my dad was terminally ill and we had started him on hospice care. And I got a call from my brother to come out to their house. And so I got there, and my brother is a manifesting generator, and my stepmom is a manifester. And they're very much like, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it. And I'm grateful for that because I prefer not to make decisions and I want to be kind of guided and just be there for the experience. I don't want to be like trying to make decisions. I'm terrible. I hate making decisions. So when I got there, these two people who have always kind of guided me are just desperately looking at me like lost puppies, like seeking my guidance. And this has never happened before. There were some decisions that needed to be made about my dad, and they didn't know what to do. And as they're looking at me, I'm processing this whole situation, like, what is happening? Why are the two people who are always making decisions asking for my input, and putting me in the driver's seat when this has never ever happened within this unit of people before? And I think I could pick up on what everybody wanted, like really wanted, but they were almost afraid to say because they didn't want to upset anyone else. And everybody wanted something different, including myself. So I had my own wants and needs for what was happening, and so did they. But I think ultimately we all wanted to do what my stepmother wanted, because we just wanted her to feel supported in this moment. It had been a very long year of illness. And so in that moment, I just realized that this is human design at its most basic level. And I'm being put in this position because they know somewhere subconsciously inside of them that I'll be able to guide us here or to the right place without any doubt or question. And so that's what I did. And it was after that, we went back to our normal roles. I mean, that was it. They just needed me for that moment, in that way. But it was also, we did choose to do in-home care for him, which means that we were administering all of his medication, during those last few days. And that kind of fell on me as well. He wouldn't really, well, first of all, he wouldn't listen to anybody, or they couldn't get his attention enough to kind of take the medicine. For whatever reason, I was able to get him to do that. So for that first day and kind of the last day, I kind of took on that role too. So, but it was really interesting to see. We all of us, my siblings and I stayed the night, and we all just naturally took a job or a role within this unit, and it just worked really, really well. And looking back on it was very much in line with who we are in human design too.
Yeah, Teresa and I are looking at your chart right now, and we can see we're looking at pentagates. At least that's where
Oh,
your mouse just went, Teresa.
That's, yeah. I was trying to get your attention with that.
I can't see it on my screen, I guess.
So everybody has a role in the penta, and what I'm noticing is with you don't have very many pentagates, neither do I, but I do have 31 and you do have 31. And so they're like in a penta, it's very much like we kind of feel not necessary until things like that come into play. So what you're describing is your pentadynamics, being a
Mhm.
reflector. And I remember talking to you when you were telling me about that situation, and you were just like, I couldn't believe I could see it just playing out. Like they were all looking to me for this like very grounded, balanced, neutral, what needs to be done? What do we do? And
Mhm.
how did that feel to be? Obviously, it was a, a very grief-stricken, devastating time with your father passing. But in that moment of all of your history with all of your family and how you felt for them to just be like, to see you,
Mhm.
how did it feel to be seen like that?
It was overwhelming for many reasons, obviously. But that aspect specifically was, um, I don't know if there's a word to describe how that felt in that moment because of what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was one of the first times that I felt like they all saw me at the same time for who I was exactly, and
Mm.
not for who they see me as based off of their selves. It was so raw. It was very raw and it was very open, and everybody was vulnerable in that moment. And I think we all saw each other in a very new way, for sure. But it was the first time that I felt like they all looked at me and we were looking at each other's souls versus each other's personalities, and these different lives that we had together growing up and that kind of thing.
Mm.
So overwhelming would be how I would describe it if I could.
Oh, it's almost like it evened the playing field, that extreme vulnerability that you all felt.
Yeah.
In that, I mean, we could relate it back to like everybody was in that moment of survival.
Mhm.
Yes.
You were,
Yes.
You were the choice
you
point.
were,
And
mhm.
I can see that with the 31 is about influential leadership. And oftentimes I see people either with that full channel or one or the other of the gates, even though they're obviously different, but it has specifically to do with speaking on behalf of a group, the 31. So I think about it as like a democratic leader of some kind that, like an actual democracy, not the fake US democracy, but, where everybody's kind of voting. And when you were describing feeling the feeling of like, I could feel what everybody wanted. It's like people were energetically casting their vote and you could feel it and you needed to be their voice in order
That's
to make a decision for the future.
that's a very, very great way to describe that. That's exactly what it was like. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like because you're a reflector, you could do that with objectivity and not have your own bias like swaying that, because I think that really is, from what I've heard reflectors talk about, the challenge of it is it's almost like you're meant to be this kind of unbiased, objective source. And yet it's so easy to not be because of everything that you're picking up and everything that you're sampling. And so there it has to be that awareness of that fluidity within you and the awareness of what you're picking up. So that's just such like a pure moment to be able to reflect on around this.
Yeah.
Yeah. With
It,
that gate. Oh, go ahead, Tiffany.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say with that gate, I can relate to being in that position in a penta when decisions had to be made for my brother. And like nobody and everybody in the room was like something different. And it was kind of like what they all wanted. And it was like, it's that voice of like, that voice of reason, that voice of what's best for the person, you know? And you mentioned like what's best for my stepmom. Everybody has their wants and needs, including myself,
Mhm.
and I felt that come out for myself with my brother and making the decision to take him off life support, and it was like, that's what we got to do, what he wants. And it was that voice, it was that kind of influential, authoritative, like, this is what we have to do. Mine comes out different because I'm not a reflector, but
Same though, on some level.
yeah, and you'll notice that kind of is a theme because of that, like where you fall in penta, with your family. You
Hmm.
have, you have five. Yeah, and Tiffany's kind of the quintessential, penta. She had the two boys, and then there was someone missing, a penta in human design, Tiffany, is like three or more, but there's this thing where if there's four, there feels like there's somebody missing. And then you had Millie, because it's like this, what the genetic imperative to like complete a penta, to like fill in a penta.
You have two out of the four defense circuit gates too, which is interesting. So the defense circuit, I kind of relate it to parenting a lot of times. Like, in that's just one way that it can express, but it's kind of this feeling of needing to kind of procreate and then also wanting to raise the children, preserve them. Um, so yeah, it's interesting that you have two out of those four gates.
Hmm.
The defense circuit, Tiffany, goes from the solar plexus, gate 6, 59, goes through the sacral, gate 27, and then gate 50.
Okay.
I'm curious your relationship to the moon. I know we touched on it a little bit. But even like as a kid, did you feel connected to the moon? Were you aware of it? Has it always been like an interest for you?
Yes, absolutely. I've always been fascinated by the moon. Stars, just the sky in general. I like love, I can't have like a bird go over me without looking at it. I can't have a plane go by without looking at it. It's I'm slightly obsessed with what's going on in the sky. I always have been since I was young.
Mm,
And due to her obsessions, she gets to see some pretty cool shit.
I do.
Like she
like
she saw
what?
she saw tell her about the bald eagle mating
Yeah.
ritual.
Yeah, I was driving between the town I live in and the town next to us, and there's a lake there. And so there's quite a bit of bald eagles here. And I saw them, and they were doing their mating ritual where they fly up really high and they lock talons, and then they just go and they fall, free fall in a spiral while they're locked together. It is like rare to see, and I've seen it twice now, but this one I got to see the whole thing. And um I like messaged Brandy like a voice message, and I'm like bawling because I'm so in awe by this situation because it was so magical to me. um it just, that was like a surprise moment for me,
I was
like
gonna say,
yeah, yeah.
surprise.
I'm like pulled over on the side of the road, and I'm just like happy tears are coming down my face, like what a lunatic. But it was so beautiful to me.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
notice a lot of your surprise comes from these more cosmic things.
Yeah.
Like in the sky, when you have this deep appreciation and just this I'm trying to like touch in on what it feels like when you share the things with me. This just ecstatic bliss of these things that happen not on the plant, not on the ground.
Yeah.
And the
I
way
think
that it just takes you over and the way that you share it, it's just something that is magic.
yeah, it's definitely like a deep appreciation for nature when it's surprising me, which is easier to do than humans, because it's, I think that that's the thing with reflectors. We like, surprise is our thing, like, but we're impossible to surprise because we know what you're doing. So like you're not going to surprise me because I can feel when you're hiding something, and I'm like, what are you doing? What's happening? What's happening? Like you can't not tell me what's going on, because I can feel that there's something going on until I drive it out of you, because you're not going to surprise me. uh, so I have to look for surprises in things that don't come from people. Usually people can still surprise me. I'm not saying they don't, but I think it's when the your environment surprises you or the nature surprises you, it's totally unexpected.
Mm.
So
And it's so pure because there's no like strategic intentions there from nature. It's just that's what's happening and you got to witness it.
exactly.
Wow.
I
That's
love to witness things.
I loved hearing you describe that. And that's something I've always wondered why reflectors are drawn to nature. And I'm sure each of you will have your own reasons for it, but I think that might be part of it. Because that seems to be a common thread with the reflectors that I've talked to is just feeling really rejuvenated in nature or, just needing to like that's the way of escaping or the way of kind of pushing a reset button is just
Yeah.
getting out into nature a little bit and getting away from everybody and crowds and life and just kind of retreating into nature.
Yeah, there's a definite the surprise aspect is a huge part of it, but being in nature, like I could go hide in my bedroom for 2 hours and recharge my battery per se, versus going outside by myself for 5 minutes and just touching the earth and having it be kind of quiet around me. It's an instant reset. It's like a rechargeable battery if you just go outside, kind of. So if
Wow.
it's quiet, that is. If it's quiet. If it's loud, it's a different story.
I also thought it was interesting how you were saying people don't surprise you very often. And that's kind of a thing that reflectors talk about as well. From a mechanical standpoint, reflectors are here to detect differentiation. And so that's where, at least in the human to human perspective of it, that's what they're picking up on is when somebody is different and unique versus just seeing the same things over and over again. And I think that might be sometimes why reflectors feel disappointed is because it was so predictable that you would do this and you did it. And, I'm not surprised at all. I'm actually disappointed that it's the same shit all the time from
And then
everybody.
you can't tell them. You can't be like, this, I'm so disappointed that you tried to surprise me and do what I wanted you to do. So, and not everyone wants to be surprised. I thought everyone loves surprises, and I threw a surprise birthday for my dad when he turned 60. And he thought it was my stepmom. So he came to me in the kitchen and he's like, I can't believe she did this. She knows I hate surprises. And I was like, it was me. I thought everyone loves surprises. I didn't think it was just me.
I don't see this tracks too with I don't see a lot of reflectors online consistently or a lot. Um, my sister is like sworn off social media. She has a Facebook so she can use Marketplace and that's about it. And I asked her about it and she's like, because it's just so disappointing to see.
It really is. That's so funny.
Do you feel that way?
Absolutely. I have social media. I rarely get on. Like her, I'll use Marketplace quite a bit. Um, I don't really get on Instagram at all, but I love like reels and TikToks and stuff that are completely unrelated to reality. And
Yeah.
just I can just kind of I don't know if I'm like checking out or if it's just this. I don't, yeah, I like that, but I'm not trying, I can't do like the other stuff really. It's
Yeah.
just not
I
my
feel like you're
thing.
more likely to feel surprised on TikTok because
And you
there's
think
just
it's
you
like,
never know what your algorithm is going to feed you. I feel like it's more of a creative hub than like I feel like since Instagram's been around longer, there's more of a uh conditionized way of doing things on there and you're just less likely to see differentiation. Whereas on TikTok, and I don't know, maybe TikTok is starting to become less and less like this, but I definitely know when I first got on TikTok in 2020, it just felt like this hub of uniqueness and differentiation.
yeah, totally random.
Yeah.
It is a little bit more accurate to the algorithm now, where if you stay on something first, you'll get more of that. But yeah, I think it's the surprise of it, right? I don't know what kind of crazy thing is going to pop up next. And I like it. Yeah.
I
But
love
that's
that.
the only one. That's the only one I can do. The rest of them, I'm just like, ugh, no.
And you also get to sample with TikTok because it's like you have the For You page. On Instagram, I think it's more about connecting to people you already know and maybe forming new relationships and networking and that kind of thing. Where TikTok, it just feels like, yeah, it just feels like you get to sample a bunch of people from all over and
Yeah.
it's just quick little bites versus kind of being fed somebody all the time.
Yeah.
How,
Absolutely.
how does it feel because you pick up vibes. Your reflector, your touch cognition, you pick up vibes here on the planet of things that are like not kosher, not cool, not correct, that can kind of be controversial or people might call them conspiracies. Is it a surprise to you when you see a TikTok about something that aligns with your like, I've always felt that?
Yeah. Is it a surprise? No. It's and that's one thing you have to be careful about too, because I am like every piece of information that I didn't know, I'm like absorb it. I'm like, give me all the information. And at first, I would just take everything right at face value. When like 2020, everything was just like we were just being, information was just coming in all day, every day. And so I was like taking all of it in until I felt like if I have any more information, I'm going to literally explode. Like I just couldn't take anymore. So I had to learn how to delegate and just not take everything so literally and understand like a lot of this is just point of views and perspectives. And um yeah, it was it was a good learning experience for me because I love a good conspiracy. So I'll go down all the rabbit holes.
There was one time when, so there's been this conspiracy or this thing that's like, who's the biggest manufacturer of glitter or the biggest user of glitter, right? Glitter, call it glitterscape or whatever conspiracies out there. But there's like some manufacturer that's been like unnamed and who uses the most glitter. Like, why can't it be named? And it was a while ago, Tiffany, you either voicemailed me, voice noted me, or sent me a video, and you're like, there is fucking glitter falling from the sky. You're like, it is not snowing, it is not raining. There is glitter coming down from the sky.
Didn't I send you a video
Yes,
of it?
yes.
I've never seen
And
anything like that in my life.
yeah, and I was like, that's fucking weird.
Yeah.
And then I was on TikTok and I saw this guy talking about how the military is the biggest purchaser of glitter because they drip it down from the sky, like poisoning us with microplastics. And I sent it to Tiffany and I was like,
And I
the
was like,
glitter. Oh my gosh.
okay, 2024.
Because he's like, they'll just pour it out and it rains glitter. And I'm like, no, Tiffany has seen it rain glitter.
I have. It was the craziest thing. It's happened. I've seen it twice. It was 2 days in a row. And the second day was when I had sent you that video because I'm like, what is happening? The kids could see it, John could see it, and I'm like, what is that? Like, it's not snowing. What's happening? Never seen anything like that in my life.
Yeah. It was
Why?
crazy.
Microplastics? That's the thing, huh? I didn't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. And I'm just like, you always like pick up on these things like it feels like in advance, like you touch into them in the future and you're like, this is something. I don't know what
Yeah.
it is. This is something. Just
I mean, I have seen some things that I can't explain. I'll put it that way. Which is probably why I'm like, give me the conspiracies so I can link it to all of these things that I've seen in my life. uh,
Like
yeah.
weed
I'll be
through
in a
them.
room and I'll get like a feeling that there's like, okay, there's like an 84-year-old man and he like needs a cigarette. And that is like, why am I thinking that? Where is that coming from? And I don't address it. I'm just like, okay, sorry, you can't smoke on
Wow.
the other side.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Teresa, you're cutting in and out. Um, I want to talk to you about we talk a lot in human design about manifestor reflector relationships, how the manifestor's here to initiate the reflector, or the reflector's here to be initiated by the manifestor. How is your relationship in your life with the manifestors that you know of?
Well, that I know of, I only know two. I'm sure I know more than that, but that I know their design, I only know two. Um, I I don't know how to answer
Hmm.
that. I don't have great relationships with either of those people. Um, so I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know how to answer that really, if it's
Mhm.
a design thing or something else.
Okay, here's a
You
question
know
that's
who both of them are, so
yes.
yeah.
Um, Here's a question that's just going to pump up me and Teresa's egos.
Okay. I know where this is going.
What is your favorite type to be around and why?
Absolutely manifesting generators for sure. And I've told you
No, I'm
guys
just
this before because it's for me, and this might not be across the board. And I'm not speaking for other reflectors. This is just me. I just feel like when I am with this is this is gonna make up people upset. I can already
no.
do it. Okay, so if I'm with a projector or a manifester, Um, just those two. I feel like they require more energy from me, and I don't have energy, right? Like I have nowhere to conjure that from. They want stuff from me that I just can't quite give them. And I think it's more because they're not asking for it the right way, maybe. I don't know. When I'm with them, when I'm with an energy, I just feel like they don't need anything from me. They're just there and I get to be there with them and they're like, yeah, 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 like high energy and it like gives me energy. And I feel like I can we can bounce ideas, we can talk, we have more things to talk about. And yeah, it just feels like you don't need anything from me. You already have it in yourself. Like you have your own energy source. You don't need mine. So it just feels, maybe that's not why. I don't know enough about design, but it's
That's
that
okay.
that's how it just feels. It just feels like you need absolutely nothing from me. Even my own child is that way. That's an MG. It's just like he doesn't come to me for any type of that kind of thing. Like we just exist together. If that makes sense. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I love hearing, it's one of my favorite things to talk to somebody who doesn't know much about design and they're just giving their experience and their
Yeah.
perspective, so it's not, I think, so reflections and um, there's got to be something that types too
You're
is
you're cut.
self-contained in a way.
You just
Oh,
cut out.
let me check my internet connection real quick. Am I back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Thomas is on a work call, and I notice whenever we're both on a call, I have to use a different internet connection.
Gotcha.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, I feel like there is something there that you're picking up on within the auric field, and I've heard MGs be described as self-contained, because there's this ability to generate our own energy from our sacral, and then there's an ability to manifest and we're in response. So it is this feeling of almost not needing the other for anything, even though we do. It can feel like we don't.
Yeah. It just doesn't feel like it kind of just feels like, well, okay, so just use Brandy as an example because we've known each other for so long, but it kind of feels like, here's what I have going on and here's what I'm doing. Do you want to join? And it's like that invitation too. Like she always includes that. And so it always just feels like, yep, because it doesn't require any me to come from anywhere that I don't already have inside of me. And then we can just go off of that versus like my husband who's kind of like needs reassurance a lot, needs to be reminded that he matters and um or like my projector son like needs a lot of reassurance and those kinds of things, which I don't mind doing at all. It just feels different.
Yeah.
What about with your generator?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, but then she has these moments where she's like physical touch. Like she wants to be touched and held and cuddled and loved, and she needs a lot of physical touch. And
Mm.
she will ask me like, "Can we cuddle?" And I'll be like, inside, I'm like, "Oh God, like I don't want to cuddle at all right now. Like I don't have it in me." But I always do because she's my daughter and she needs her attention, like when she's asking for it. And so then when in the moments when I do feel like I have that in me, I'll be like, come here, and make sure to give it to her when I do feel like it. So she doesn't always feel like it's forced or something, or she has to ask for it. But as far as like that's also true for her, where I don't feel like she needs anything from me unless it's like she needs some physical attention.
Mm. Yeah,
Mhm.
she has that 1949 tribal touch channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes
Weston
sense.
has that too. He'll be like, and he's like already, he's like bigger than me, taller than me right now. And he'll be like, will you come snuggle me in my bed? And I'm like, "Ugh." I don't like, I don't like physical touch anyways. And I have two people in my house that have the touch tribal channels. And I'm like, "Bleh, ugh,
I can
no."
totally relate.
I'm like, what are you two? What's your karma, you two, with the 1949 and touch?
Right. And for you to be touch cognition and being like touched out in a reflector, like I just need time. And then you have these like Velcro. We have these Velcro children that are like,
Mm-hmm.
snuggle me. And then when they're done, they're done. And they're just like, I'm done. And I'm like, you just
Yeah.
used me.
I feel so abused.
You just used me. Oh.
That's funny. I also wanted to ask about, so the reflector authority is to wait a lunar cycle. So wait for 30 days to experience the moon, go through all 64 gates from a mechanical perspective. Do you feel like throughout your life, you naturally would just take a long time to make big decisions? And do you feel like you were conditioned to not be that way?
Yes. I don't know if I think that is part of why I don't like making decisions because it feels like I'm supposed to decide right now. I don't even like to decide where to go to eat. Like I don't want to decide what to eat. I just want someone else to tell me, what do you guys all want to eat this week and I'll cook it, but I do not want to decide it at all. And I think that's because it requires me to decide right now and I don't like to do that. Um yeah, I think that that's part of it though, is like when you're young and you're just living by your design by nature, and then people are like, come on, let's go figure it out. And so you have to make this decision. And then it's like either disappointing or it doesn't work out how it should have worked out because you rushed the decision. So I think over time I became like, I don't want to make decisions because it doesn't work out or it's going to disappoint me or, that kind of thing. So I try to avoid. I'm realizing this as we're talking, what I how this okay, I see. This is like a conditioned moment for me. So,
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, it's almost like the fear of disappointment because I've heard other reflectors talk about that, like feeling like exactly what you said. I don't want to make a decision because it's going to lead to disappointment if I do.
mhm.
Do you feel like that made you, like it conditioned you to have this maybe limiting belief that you were indecisive, wishy-washy, or that your decision didn't matter or you didn't matter? Do you see where that might have contributed to some?
Absolutely. Now that we're there, yeah, it's all flooding in. But yeah, for
Mhm.
sure. Hmm.
I,
Um, sure.
I was
Yeah.
feeling that. I was watching you and I'm like, oh, I can feel
Yeah.
that.
Coming in like, oh, here's how this has played out over and over and over again, and here's how it has affected you. So there's the beauty in being a reflector. There's
Wow.
the beauty in deconditioning, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did you feel incredibly fucking validated when you learned that it is your design to wait a very long time to make a decision?
I mean, I don't know if I've had that moment yet that
Mm.
I felt validated in it. No.
Mm.
Because I feel like, well, I do feel it's given me permission to do that. I don't know if it's validated anything, but it definitely has made me feel like I have permission to take my time, and kind of like fuck everybody that doesn't want to wait. Like they can do their own thing until I've decided for myself. You know what I mean? So it did, I guess that is a little bit of validation, right? Where you feel like you can just say, like, I'm going to just do what I need to do for myself right now.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
But
Yeah, because how different does it feel when you're just making a decision for yourself versus it impacts other people?
oh, definitely a different feeling. I don't feel pressure when I'm making a decision for myself. And I feel a ton of pressure if I'm making a decision that impacts everyone else around me,
Mm.
to make the right decision. But I also have an incredibly strong feeling that when I'm making the decision, I'm making the right one if I'm making it from the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So making the decision correctly doesn't feel like pressure, but making it too quickly feels like pressure.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend Sarah, who's a reflector, and she was saying once you've been tracking your decisions and your lunar cycles for a while and you start having this realization of how it's actually working, it's more of a timing thing. And it's not so much of, okay, I need 30 days. The act of doing that just gives you an awareness of feeling into the right timing of things.
Yeah.
So it was almost like she was saying that because reflectors are so surrendered, because you have no definition that is except for your hanging gates, but you have no circuitry that is a constant for you. A lot of things in your life, it's waiting for the transits to show up and give you the energy to do it. So if, let's say, you need to make a big decision that's going to require a lot of sacral energy and you don't have that definition right now, you might be waiting for that energy to come along and for
Mhm.
the basically for the stars to align, for everything to be in the right place for you to have the energy to do something. And so it, not to say that the reflectors out there shouldn't still wait their lunar cycles, but I think once you've been doing it for a while and you've been kind of deconditioning enough and aware of what that feels like, that transient energy, and you don't get too attached to any one feeling or way of being because you are so fluid, there is just this feeling of, okay, this is the right timing. And I'm able to just wait for that energy to show up for myself.
Yeah. I think that's one thing I would have liked to have been more aware of when I first started learning human design was that 30 days is more of a guideline than
Yeah.
a rule. Because when you do know, you know. When you know that you have your answer, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and now that I know how to chart the lunar cycle, obviously I can look at those days and decide like, like know when a good day for decision is. But also I don't need that to know,
Yeah.
because it is a full bodied knowing. So that is one thing I wish I would have been more aware of at the beginning, because I felt like, oh my gosh, if I make this decision too soon, then I haven't given myself the right amount of time. And really, I didn't necessarily need 30 days. I may have only needed a few days to decide, or even a day.
Yeah.
But again, not knowing that.
Yeah. I think that, like you said, the 30 days is a guideline and it's obviously something to just experiment with, like everything else in design. And what happens when I give myself a lunar cycle and how do I feel differently? Um, my friend who's a reflector was famously talking about how for her dating, it was like she'd be dating somebody for 3 weeks, and then the fourth week she would lose interest. Like it was this cycle that was happening every time. And so she'd like commit to the person and, have all these feelings and, and then the fourth week she'd feel like, I don't really even like this person. Wait a minute. And so she started learning, okay, that is something I need to wait the 30 days for because this is a pattern. I'm noticing that the fourth week with every person I'm with, my feelings start to change until she met her now partner. And then it was like, oh, I was still into him after the month. So, I
Yeah.
think, but it's like that's for you to experiment with and collect data in your own experiment with. That might not be obviously the case for everybody. So I think that's why it is a good guideline, is because there's so much change that happens in that 30-day span and you can start to pick up on patterns for yourself.
Yeah.
So up on the screen currently, we have your transit chart.
Mhm.
How are you feeling today? How are you feeling right now or today?
Well, I feel like we picked the right day to do this, because last Monday I would not have had the capacity to do it. So I
Mhm.
feel like today I definitely have the energy to be here with you guys today and be able to do this without getting like super nervous and want to turn around last minute and not do it like sometimes I do.
Mhm.
Oh, I love
Yeah, and
that.
the,
And
the moon is in gate 52 and you have gate 9 naturally, so might be a little bit more easy to sit and focus.
yeah, X52 is about being able to sit still and focus on something. And so normally when you have 9 without the 52, how it can show up is like not being able to sit still and focus and kind of feeling antsy. And so I think
Mhm.
that's interesting that the transits are giving you that ability. And I also noticed that the 52 is in a fourth line right now. And so I would think that maybe as a reflector who's mostly impacted by the moon, having it be in a fourth line is a good day to externalize or a good time because this will obviously change in the next hour or so. But
Hmm. Yeah, I've even noticed I have 9 hanging without 52. And so for anybody watching on YouTube who's watched previous episodes, I'm probably a lot more still.
you are.
Normally I'm just all over the place. I feel bad for people watching on YouTube because I'm just not caring about the fact that I'm on a camera. I'm moving around and so right now with the transits, you have 6, 7 defined centers. Head
I was also
ajna,
was thinking
spleen.
that that 6124 can be sudden breakthroughs and sudden awareness. And you seem to be have had like just watching you throughout this conversation is like you're having these sudden awarenesses.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's a daily thing though. Sometimes I'm like, what? Okay, there's a new piece of information to muddle around.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, you have the 61 all the time, so you're always going to have that pressure to have an awareness, or it's almost like a pressure to like a mental pressure to solve a mystery, and you can have repetitive thoughts that cycle through. But if your mind feels extra active, I'm not sure the 24 is currently in Jupiter, so that's a longer transit. So you might be have been experiencing this for a while.
Mm.
Sometimes with that head and ajna definition, if you're not used to it, at least in my experience, is like you can like physically feel it, almost like a headache or just
Pressure.
like a pressure or ruminating thoughts. When that transits in, I feel like I'm drawn more to meditate because I'm like, what the fuck is going on up here? And you
Yeah.
have another long transit with that 3740. Because you have gate 40, that's the solar plexus to the ego center. It's called the channel of community. It's like provider, resource, mom, dad energy.
Yeah, I wonder if, everything that's gone on with your family, if having that transit right now is not only bringing up that thematic in your life to be supportive in your community and in your tribe and be a resource for them, but just giving you the energy to do that.
Yeah, that feels accurate.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at her chart. Is there anything that you would like to share about what you're seeing right now, just in life in general, in like a world view? Any hope you have for us?
Oh God, that's a lot of
Uh-oh.
pressure. Um, I don't know. I haven't been a big picture person right now. It's been family oriented
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the year, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so big picture, I'm not tapped into that right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, it's my dog right on cue. Yeah, I don't know. But I am hopeful though that we can get our shit together as a species.
Good, your probability view. So just like me. It's probable, guys. It's probable.
Awesome. Well, this feels like a good closing. Everybody
Yeah.
feel complete?
Yes. Thank you
Awesome.
for joining us, Tiffany.
No, thank you
And
guys for having me on very much.
Tiffany's elusive. So, if you have anything that you'd like to comment to Tiffany, you can DM us at Human Design Coffee Talk on Instagram or drop it in the comments on YouTube. Um, yeah, it's just been nice having a conversation with you. Tiffany's, like I said at the beginning, been a longtime friend. And right when I learned about human design, she did too. And I just want to say I appreciate your friendship.
I appreciate you as well. I appreciate both of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Yes, my pleasure.
Thanks for